The wedding dress weighed 20 pounds with all its pearls and lace, but Arabella Winters ran through the darkened streets of Cimarron, New Mexico, like her feet had sprouted wings, the white fabric billowing behind her like a ghost in the summer night of 1881. Her lungs burned as she fled from the church, from the man waiting at the altar, from the life that had been chosen for her by everyone except herself. The midnight air was cool against her flushed cheeks as she stumbled down the dusty main street, past the saloon where drunken laughter spilled into the night, past the general store with its darkened windows, her vision blurring with tears and desperation. She had no plan, no destination, only the overwhelming need to escape. Victor Caldwell, the man she was supposed to marry in less than an hour, was a wealthy cattle baron twice her age with cold eyes and hands that gripped too tightly. Her father had arranged the marriage to settle his gambling debts, and her mother had looked away when Arabella begged her to intervene. So she had waited until the last possible moment, until the church was full of guests and the preacher was clearing his throat, and then she had simply walked out the side door and started running. The edge of town approached quickly, and Arabella's carefully arranged hair had come completely undone, auburn waves tumbling down her back. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she veered off the main road, following nothing but instinct. A large barn loomed ahead in the darkness, sitting on what appeared to be a modest ranch property. Without thinking, she pushed through the wooden door and found herself surrounded by the warm smell of hay and horses. A ladder led up to a loft, and she climbed it quickly, burrowing into the hay like a frightened animal seeking shelter. She had barely caught her breath when she heard voices outside. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed herself deeper into the hay, praying the darkness would conceal her white dress. "Search every building," a man's voice barked. She recognized it as belonging to one of Victor's ranch hands. "Mr. Caldwell wants her found tonight." "She could not have gotten far in that dress," another voice replied. Arabella held her breath, trembling in the darkness. The barn door creaked open, and she could see the faint glow of lantern light below. Heavy footsteps moved through the space beneath her, and then she heard the ladder creak. Someone was climbing up to the loft. "Anyone up here?" A different voice called, deeper and calmer than the others. This voice belonged to someone else, someone who was not part of the search party. She remained silent, paralyzed with fear. "I asked if anyone is up here," the voice repeated, and now she could see the top of a hat as someone's head appeared above the loft floor. The man holding the lantern had dark hair and a face that was young but weathered by sun and wind. He was perhaps 26 or 27, with strong features and eyes that caught the lantern light. When those eyes landed on her, huddled in her wedding dress in his hay, they widened slightly, but showed no alarm. "Well," he said quietly, "that is quite a situation you have gotten yourself into." Arabella opened her mouth, but no words came out. The man glanced down at the barn floor below, then back at her. "Those men outside looking for you?" he asked in a low voice. She nodded, her throat tight. He studied her for a long moment, taking in the expensive wedding dress, her bare feet, her terrified expression. Then he did something that surprised her completely. He climbed down the ladder and walked to the barn door, opening it wide. "Nobody in here," he called out to the men searching his property. "Just my horses and a whole lot of hay. You are welcome to look, but I would appreciate it if you did not disturb my animals. They spook easily." "We will take your word for it, Owen," one of the searchers replied. "If you see a woman in a wedding dress running around, you let Mr. Caldwell know right away. There is a substantial reward." "A woman in a wedding dress," the man called Owen repeated, his tone carefully neutral. "That does sound like something a person would notice." I will certainly keep my eyes open. The voices faded as the search party moved on to other buildings. Owen closed the barn door and stood there for a moment, his hand resting on the weathered wood. Then he walked back to the ladder and climbed up to the loft. Arabella had not moved. She watched him warily as he set the lantern down on a beam and settled himself on a hay bale, keeping a respectful distance between them. "I am Owen Mackenzie," he said. "This is my barn, my ranch. Not much of one, but it is mine." "Why did you not turn me in?" Arabella whispered. "They said there was a reward." Owen shrugged. "I figure a woman running away from her own wedding in the middle of the night has a pretty good reason. Was not my place to interfere with whatever you are running from." Fresh tears spilled down Arabella's cheeks. "Thank you," she managed. "You got a name, Arabella, Arabella Winters." Owen nodded slowly. "The Winters family that lives on the east side of town." "Yes." "And who was the groom you were running from?" Victor Caldwell. Something flickered across Owen's face, something dark and knowing. "Victor Caldwell," he repeated. "That man is old enough to be your father." "He is 43, Arabella said quietly. "I am 21. My father arranged the marriage to settle his debts. Mr. Caldwell has money and my father has expensive habits." Owen was silent for a moment, his jaw tight. "That is a sorry situation," he finally said. "I am sorry your father put you in that position." "What am I going to do?" Arabella asked, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. "They will search all night. My father will be furious. Victor will demand I go through with the wedding. I have nowhere to go, no money, nothing but this ridiculous dress." "You can stay here," Owen said simply. Arabella stared at him. "What?" "In the loft. It is not comfortable, but it is dry and safe. You can stay as long as you need. You do not even know me. I could be a thief or a liar, or you are a scared woman in a wedding dress hiding in my hay." Owen interrupted gently. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character and the character of the people you are running from. Stay as long as you need. We will figure out the rest in the morning." Arabella felt something crack open inside her chest, some tight knot of fear and desperation loosening just slightly. "I do not know what to say." "You do not need to say anything. Try to get some rest. I will be in the house if you need anything, but I will leave you the lantern. There are more blankets in that chest over there, and you can help yourself to anything you need." He moved toward the ladder, then paused and looked back at her. "One more thing. You are safe here, Arabella. I give you my word on that. No one will hurt you while you are on my property." Then he was gone, climbing down the ladder and disappearing into the night, leaving her alone in the loft with the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls below, and the infinite possibilities of what came next. Arabella did not sleep much that night. She found the blankets Owen had mentioned and wrapped herself in them, but her mind would not quiet. Every sound made her jump, convinced that Victor's men had returned. But as the hours passed and dawn began to lighten the sky outside the loft window, she started to believe that perhaps she really was safe, at least for now. When the sun was fully up, she heard movement below. The barn door opened and Owen's voice spoke softly to the horses. She listened to him moving through his morning routine, the sounds of hay being distributed, water buckets being filled. It was peaceful, this simple rhythm of ranch life, so different from the rigid formality of her own home. "Arabella," Owen called up after a while, "are you awake?" "Yes," she answered, her voice rough from exhaustion. "I have breakfast up at the house if you are hungry. Nothing fancy, just bacon and eggs and coffee." Her stomach growled at the mention of food. She had been too nervous to eat anything the day before. "That sounds wonderful, but I cannot go outside in this dress. Everyone will see me." "I brought you some clothes," Owen said, climbing the ladder with a bundle in his arms. "They belong to my sister. She moved to Denver last year to live with our aunt, but she left some things behind. You are about the same size, I think. He set the bundle on the hay and quickly descended the ladder again, giving her privacy. Arabella unfolded the clothes and found a simple cotton dress in a soft blue color, along with undergarments, stockings, and a pair of worn boots. The dress was plain but well made, and after the elaborate monstrosity of her wedding gown, it looked like heaven. She changed quickly, grateful to be free of the heavy silk and restrictive corset. The cotton dress fit reasonably well, though it was a bit loose in the bodice and short in the hem. The boots were tight but wearable. She folded the wedding dress carefully, not sure what else to do with it, and climbed down the ladder. Owen was waiting by the barn door, and when he saw her, something shifted in his expression. "The blue suits you," he said simply. "Thank you for the clothes," Arabella replied, "and for everything. I know this is a tremendous imposition. Come on up to the house and eat something. You look like you are about to fall over." The ranch house was small but tidy, with a main room that served as both kitchen and living area, and what appeared to be 2 bedrooms off to the side. Everything was clean and organized, though sparse. Owen pulled out a chair at the rough wooden table and gestured for her to sit. The food was simple but delicious, and Arabella ate more than she had intended, suddenly ravenous. Owen sat across from her with his own plate, eating in comfortable silence. She studied him in the morning light. He was handsome in a weathered, practical way, with strong hands and a serious expression that occasionally softened when he looked at her. "How long have you had this ranch?" she asked. 3 years. "I saved up working as a ranch hand for other people, and when old Mr. Peterson died, his widow sold me this place for a fair price. It is not much, just 20 acres and a dozen horses, but it is mine. I break and train horses, sell them to ranchers and the cavalry. It is a living." "It is more than that," Arabella said. "It is a life you built yourself. That is admirable." Owen shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the compliment. "What about you? What was your life like before last night?" Arabella set down her fork. "Suffocating. My father is a lawyer, but he spends more time at the card tables than in his office. My mother maintains appearances and pretends not to notice how much money disappears. I have a younger brother who is away at school in Santa Fe. I spent my days doing needlework and taking tea with other young ladies, and being told how lucky I was that a man like Victor Caldwell wanted to marry me. That does not sound lucky at all." It was not. Victor is cold and controlling. During our courtship, if you can call it that, he made it very clear that he expected complete obedience from his wife. He told me which dresses to wear, which topics of conversation were appropriate, which friends I would be allowed to keep. When I tried to protest, he would grip my arm so tightly that he left bruises, and my parents just told me I was being dramatic and difficult. Owen's jaw tightened. "He hurt you." "Not badly, but I knew it would get worse once we were married. I heard stories from women who knew his first wife. She died 5 years ago, and there were rumors that her death was not the accident everyone claimed it was." "Jesus," Owen muttered. He stood abruptly and walked to the window, staring out at his land. "You did the right thing, running. You know that, right?" "I do not know anything anymore," Arabella admitted. "All I know is that I could not stand at that altar and promise to love and obey a man who frightened me. But now, I have nowhere to go and no way to support myself. Women do not have many options, especially women who run away from their own weddings." Owen turned back to her. "You have options. Maybe not easy ones, but they exist. You could go to Denver, start fresh where no one knows you, or Santa Fe. There are opportunities in the cities for women willing to work." "With what money? I have nothing." Everything I owned belonged to my father, and now I suppose it belongs to Victor, since my father sold me to him like a piece of property." The bitterness in her voice surprised even herself. Owen crossed back to the table and sat down, leaning forward with his elbows on the worn wood. "Here is what I am thinking," he said. "You stay here for a few days. Lie low until the immediate search dies down. That gives you time to figure out your next move. I could use some help around the ranch anyway. I am training 3 young horses right now, and it is a lot of work for one person. You help me out, and in return, I will pay you wages. Not much, but enough to save up for a train ticket or a stage coach to wherever you decide to go." Arabella looked at him searchingly. "Why are you doing this? You do not owe me anything. You are risking trouble with Victor Caldwell, who is a powerful man in this territory." "Because it is the right thing to do," Owen said firmly. "And because I do not much care for men like Victor Caldwell, who think money gives them the right to control other people. You want to know the truth. He offered me a good price for one of my best horses last year, but I turned him down because I did not like the way he treated the animal when he came to look at it. Any man who is cruel to animals is not someone I want to do business with. And if he treats his horses that way, I can only imagine how he would treat a wife. You turn down money on principle. I have principles I care about more than money." Something warm unfurled in Arabella's chest, a feeling she could not quite name. Here was a man who lived by a code of honor that had nothing to do with wealth or status or social position. A man who offered help without expecting anything in return. A man who was nothing like her father or Victor Caldwell or any of the other men she had known. "All right," she said. "I accept your offer, but I want to earn my keep properly. What time do we start work?" Owen smiled, and it transformed his serious face into something boyish and appealing. "About an hour ago, but I will make an exception for today. Come on, let me show you the horses." The next few days fell into a rhythm that Arabella would not have believed possible a week earlier. She woke with the sun, dressed in another of Owen's sister's practical dresses, and joined him in the barn. He taught her how to properly feed and water the horses, how to muck out stalls, how to brush and curry their coats until they gleamed. The work was hard and her muscles ached, but there was something deeply satisfying about it. She was doing something real, something useful, and no one was telling her it was unladylike or inappropriate. The horses themselves were magnificent. Owen had a gift with them, she realized quickly. He never raised his voice or used harsh methods. Instead, he worked with infinite patience, earning their trust through consistency and gentleness. She watched him work with a young bay gelding that had been badly treated by its previous owner, coaxing the frightened animal into accepting a saddle, and she saw the same kindness he had shown her that first night in the barn. "You have to let them know you are not going to hurt them," Owen explained as they stood by the corral fence watching the bay trot nervously around the enclosure. "That horse has been beaten and scared. He has no reason to trust people. So I have to show him over and over again that I am different, that I will not hurt him no matter what he does." "How long does it take?" Arabella asked. "Depends on the horse. Some come around in a few days. Others take weeks or months. But they all come around eventually if you are patient enough." "What if they do not?" Owen shrugged. "Then I keep trying. Giving up is not really in my nature." They worked together through the morning heat, and Arabella discovered that she enjoyed the physical labor more than she ever expected. There was something liberating about sweating and getting dirty, about using her body for something other than sitting still and looking decorative. Owen treated her like a capable partner, showing her what to do but trusting her to figure things out. In the evenings, they ate simple meals that they took turns preparing. Arabella's cooking skills were limited to what she had learned from watching the family cook, but Owen was patient with her efforts. They would sit at the table and talk about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up on a ranch farther north, about his father who had died when Owen was 16, about his mother who had remarried and moved to Texas. She told him about her childhood in Cimarron, about the books she loved to read, about her dreams of seeing the ocean someday. "Why the ocean?" Owen asked one evening as they cleaned up after dinner. "It seems like freedom, I suppose. This huge expanse of water that goes on forever, that nobody can own or control. I read about it in books, and I wanted to know what it would feel like to stand at the edge of something so vast. Maybe you will get there someday." "Maybe," Arabella said, though she could not quite imagine it. On the fourth night, they were sitting on the porch of the ranch house watching the stars come out when Owen spoke up. "I need to go into town tomorrow to pick up some supplies. You should probably stay here and keep out of sight." Arabella's stomach clenched. She had been trying not to think about the world beyond the ranch, but of course it was still out there. "What are people saying about me?" "I do not know. I have been avoiding town since you arrived, but I am running low on feed and a few other things, so I need to make a trip. Be careful. If Victor or his men see you, they have no reason to connect me to you. As far as anyone knows, I am just a rancher doing my business." But Arabella worried anyway. She spent the next day working alone, mucking stalls and exercising the horses in the corral. The bay gelding allowed her to approach him, and she counted that as a victory. She was brushing down one of the mares when she heard the sound of a wagon approaching. Her heart leaped into her throat. It was too early for Owen to be back. She quickly led the mare into her stall and climbed up into the loft, positioning herself where she could see the barn entrance but remain hidden. The wagon stopped outside, and she heard voices. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized one of them as belonging to Victor Caldwell. "I am telling you, Mackenzie, there is a substantial reward for information leading to Arabella Winters' whereabouts. $500. That is more than you make in half a year off this little ranch of yours." "That is a generous reward," Owen's voice replied, carefully neutral. "But as I told your men the night she disappeared, I have not seen any women in wedding dresses running around my property. She could have changed clothes. That is true, but I still have not seen her. I live alone out here and I keep to myself. If she passed through, I did not notice." "I find that hard to believe." Victor's voice had taken on a sharp edge. "You are one of the few ranchers out this direction. If she ran this way, she would have ended up at your place. There is a lot of open land around here. She could be anywhere. Have you checked with the stage-coach lines?" "Maybe she managed to get out of town." "We have checked everything," Victor snapped. "That girl owes me a wedding and I intend to collect. Her father accepted my money. We had an agreement. An agreement between you and her father, not between you and her." There was a long, dangerous pause. "You sound sympathetic to her situation, Mackenzie. That makes me wonder if maybe you know more than you are saying." "I am sympathetic to anyone being forced into something they do not want, but that does not mean I know where she is. I could have my men search your property right now." "You could," Owen agreed, "but you would need a warrant from the sheriff to do it legal-like. And Sheriff Morrison is not in the habit of issuing warrants without evidence. If you want to search my ranch on your own authority, well, that would be trespassing. And I take trespassing seriously." Arabella could hear the steel beneath Owen's polite words. She held her breath, terrified that Victor would call his bluff. "This is not over," Victor said finally. "If I find out you have been hiding her, there will be consequences. If you find evidence that I have been hiding her, you are welcome to take it to the sheriff. Until then, I would appreciate it if you got off my property. You are upsetting my horses." The wagon eventually rolled away, and Arabella stayed frozen in the loft until she heard Owen climb the ladder. "You can come out," he said quietly. "He is gone." She emerged from her hiding spot, trembling. "He suspects you. This is too dangerous. I should leave." "And go where? He has people watching the roads and the stage lines. You heard him. I am putting you in danger." Owen looked at her steadily. "That is my choice to make, and I choose to help you." "Why?" Arabella demanded, frustrated and frightened and confused. "Why are you risking so much for someone you barely know?" Owen was quiet for a long moment. "At first, because it was the right thing to do. But now," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Now it is because I care what happens to you. Because these last few days working alongside you have been the best days I have had in a long time. Because when I think about Victor Caldwell getting his hands on you, I want to punch something. Is that honest enough for you?" Arabella stared at him, her heart pounding. "Owen, you do not have to say anything. I know this is complicated. I just needed you to know why I am doing this. It is not charity or pity. It is because you matter to me." He descended the ladder before she could respond, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts and the strange, warm feeling spreading through her chest. That night, sleep eluded her completely. She kept replaying Owen's words, the rough honesty in his voice when he admitted he cared about her. It had been less than a week since she ran away from her wedding, since she climbed into this loft in her elaborate wedding dress. How had everything changed so completely in such a short time? She thought about Victor, about the life she had escaped. Then she thought about Owen, about his quiet strength and gentle hands, and the way he looked at her like she was someone worth listening to. The difference between the two men was staggering. But what did Owen's confession mean? What did she want it to mean? Her whole life had been upended, her future uncertain. Was it wise to let herself develop feelings for the man who had offered her shelter? Or had she already developed those feelings without meaning to, somewhere between learning to muck stalls and watching him gentle a frightened horse? Morning came too soon. Arabella climbed down from the loft to find Owen already working, his movements brisk and efficient. There was a tension in his shoulders that had not been there before. "I have been thinking," he said without preamble. "Victor is not going to give up. He has too much pride and he spent too much money on a wedding that did not happen. We need a more permanent solution." "Like what?" "You could marry me." Arabella felt the world tilt. "What?" Owen turned to face her, his expression serious. "If you are married to someone else, Victor has no legal claim on you. The agreement was between him and your father, but your father cannot promise you to another man if you are already married. It would solve the problem." "That is insane," Arabella said, her voice shaking. "You cannot just marry someone to solve a problem." "Why not?" "People get married for worse reasons. At least this way you would be safe and free to make your own choices about what comes next." "And what would you get out of this arrangement?" Owen's jaw tightened. "I would get to know you are safe. That is enough." "No," Arabella said firmly. "That is not fair to you. You cannot tie yourself to someone out of some misguided sense of honor. What if you want to marry someone else someday? Someone you actually love? What if I already care about you enough that this does not feel like a sacrifice?" The words hung in the air between them. Arabella felt tears prick her eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave and strong and kind. I know you would rather face an uncertain future alone than marry a man you fear. I know you are not afraid of hard work and you treat my horses with gentleness. I know that when you laugh at something funny, your whole face lights up. I know," he stopped, seeming to catch himself. "I know enough." "This is crazy," Arabella whispered. "Maybe. But it would work. We could go to Santa Fe, get married there where nobody knows us, come back as husband and wife. Victor could not touch you. And then what? We live here together in this house and pretend to be a happy couple. We would not have to pretend anything. It could be a real marriage if you wanted, or it could be an arrangement on paper only. I would leave that up to you. But at least you would be safe, and you would have time to figure out what you really want." Arabella turned away from him, her mind spinning. It was a wild idea, reckless and impulsive. But was it any more reckless than running away from her wedding in the first place? At least this way she would have legal protection and a place to stay while she figured out her next move. And if she was being completely honest with herself, the idea of being married to Owen did not frighten her the way marrying Victor had. In fact, it did not frighten her at all. "Give me time to think about it," she said finally. "Take all the time you need." But events moved faster than either of them anticipated. That afternoon, Sheriff Morrison rode up to the ranch with 2 of his deputies. Arabella saw them coming and barely made it to the loft before they knocked on the barn door. "Owen Mackenzie," the sheriff called. "Need to have a word with you." Arabella pressed herself against the wall, her heart hammering. She could hear Owen greeting the sheriff with polite wariness. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" Victor Caldwell filed a complaint. "Says he has reason to believe you might be harboring Arabella Winters, the young woman who ran away from their wedding last week. Now, I told him I could not search your property without evidence, but he was pretty insistent. So I thought I would come out here and ask you directly. Have you seen the girl?" There was a pause. "Yes," Owen said, and Arabella's heart stopped. "I have. She is here, she is. She arrived the night she ran away, scared and desperate. I offered her shelter and safety, and I would do it again. Victor Caldwell is a bully and a brute, and that girl was right to run from him." "That may be true," the sheriff said, sounding uncomfortable. "But legally, there was a contract between Caldwell and Arabella's father. That puts me in a difficult position." "What if there was no longer a legal question?" Owen said. "What if Arabella and I were married? Would Caldwell have any claim then? You and Arabella Winters are married." The sheriff sounded skeptical. "Not yet. But we will be, as soon as we can get to Santa Fe. She agreed this morning." That was a lie, but Arabella understood what Owen was doing. He was forcing the issue, giving her an out whether she had decided to take it or not. "That is quite convenient," the sheriff said dryly. "Caldwell is going to say you coerced her or that she is not of sound mind. Then he can say it to my face. Better yet, he can say it to Arabella's face. She is here of her own free will, and she will tell you that herself. I need to speak with her." Owen climbed the ladder and found Arabella waiting. "I am sorry," he said quietly, "but this might be our only chance." She nodded, understanding. Together they descended to where the sheriff waited. Sheriff Morrison was a weathered man in his 50s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked Arabella up and down, taking in her simple dress and work-worn hands. "Miss Winters, there has been considerable concern about your whereabouts." "I am fine, Sheriff. Better than fine, actually. Your father says you were distraught and not thinking clearly when you left your wedding. Mr. Caldwell is willing to forgive the embarrassment if you return and go through with the ceremony." "That is generous of him," Arabella said, unable to keep the sarcasm from her voice. "But I have no intention of marrying Victor Caldwell. I came here seeking help from Mr. Mackenzie, and he has been nothing but kind and respectful. We have decided to marry each other instead. That is a mighty quick courtship. Perhaps, but it is my choice to make. I am 21 years old, which makes me legally an adult. I can marry whom I choose, and I choose Owen Mackenzie." The sheriff studied her face. "You are certain about this? You are not being coerced?" "I am absolutely certain. Owen has treated me with more respect and consideration in 1 week than Victor Caldwell showed me during our entire courtship. I would rather spend my life with a good man who has little money than a wealthy man who has no heart." "Well," the sheriff said after a long moment, "I suppose that is pretty clear, but you should know that your father is not going to be happy about this, and neither is Caldwell." "There will be talk. Let them talk," Arabella said firmly. "I am done living my life according to other people's expectations." The sheriff tipped his hat. "In that case, I wish you both well. I suggest you get yourselves to Santa Fe and make this official sooner rather than later." Caldwell is not the type to give up easily. After the sheriff left, Arabella and Owen stood in the barn looking at each other. "I am sorry," Owen said again. "I know I pushed you into a corner with that, but I thought—" "You thought right," Arabella interrupted. "The sheriff showing up forced the issue. And I realized, standing there telling him I chose you, that I meant it. I do choose you, Owen. Not because I am desperate or out of options, but because in the short time I have known you, you have shown me what it means to be treated with kindness and respect. You have given me space to breathe and figure out who I am outside of my father's house and Victor's control. So yes, I will marry you if you are still willing." A slow smile spread across Owen's face, transforming it. "I am willing, more than willing. When do we leave for Santa Fe?" "Tomorrow morning. We can take the wagon, be there in 2 days. Get married and be back before Caldwell can do anything about it." That evening, they prepared for the journey. Owen insisted Arabella take the bed in the main house while he slept on the floor by the stove, maintaining propriety even though they were about to become husband and wife. She lay awake for a long time, listening to his breathing in the next room, trying to process the magnitude of what she was about to do. She was going to marry Owen Mackenzie, a man she had known for barely a week, a man who had saved her from a terrible fate and asked for nothing in return. A man whose quiet strength and gentle nature had already worked their way into her heart, whether she had intended to let them in or not. It was reckless and impulsive and probably foolish, but it also felt more right than anything she had done in her entire carefully controlled life. They left before dawn, the wagon loaded with supplies and the two of them sitting side by side on the bench seat. The road to Santa Fe was rough and dusty, winding through high desert landscape that turned golden in the morning sun. Owen drove with easy confidence, and they fell into comfortable conversation as the miles rolled past. "Tell me about your sister," Arabella said. "The one whose clothes I have been wearing. Clara. She is 2 years younger than me, smart as a whip and twice as stubborn. She hated ranch life, always wanted something more exciting. When our aunt wrote and said she could come to Denver and attend a ladies' finishing school, Clara jumped at the chance. She lives with Aunt Margaret now, learning to be a proper society lady." Owen grinned. "Last letter I got, she said she was courting the son of a railroad executive. I think she will do just fine for herself. You miss her." "I do. But I am glad she is happy. Not everyone is meant for ranch life." "And you? Is this the life you always wanted?" Owen considered the question. "I always wanted land of my own, a place where I could make my own decisions and live by my own code. The ranch gives me that. Is it everything I dreamed of when I was younger? Maybe not. But it is honest work and it is mine. That counts for something." "It counts for a lot," Arabella said softly. They made camp that night in a grove of cottonwood trees by a small stream. Owen built a fire and they ate a simple meal of beans and bacon, watching the stars come out overhead. The vastness of the night sky made Arabella feel small and infinite all at once. "Nervous about tomorrow?" Owen asked. "A little. Are you?" "Terrified," he admitted, and they both laughed. "At least we are terrified together." Owen reached over and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "I will do everything I can to make you happy, Arabella." I know this is not a conventional marriage, but I promise I will respect you and treat you right. I know you will. That is why I am here." They sat in companionable silence, hands linked, until the fire burned low and it was time to sleep. Owen gave her the bedroll and took a blanket for himself, maintaining a respectful distance even though they would be married the next day. They reached Santa Fe late the following afternoon, dusty and tired from the road. The city was bigger than Cimarron, bustling with activity even as evening approached. Owen found a respectable boarding house where they could spend the night in separate rooms. Then they set out to find the territorial office where marriages were registered. The clerk who processed their marriage license was a bored-looking man who barely glanced at them as he filed the necessary paperwork. They would have to wait until the next morning for a judge to perform the ceremony, he informed them, but everything else was in order. "This time tomorrow you will be Mrs. Mackenzie," Owen said as they walked back to the boarding house through the evening streets. "That is strange to think about. I was supposed to be Mrs. Caldwell by now. Having second thoughts, not about you. Just thinking about how quickly life can change. A week ago I thought my future was set in stone. Now everything is different." Owen stopped walking and turned to face her. "If you want to back out, we can. I meant what I said before. I do not want you to feel trapped." "I do not feel trapped," Arabella said. "For the first time in my life, I feel free. Tomorrow I will marry you and it will be my choice. That means everything." The ceremony the next morning was brief and practical, performed by a territorial judge in an office that smelled of leather and tobacco. Owen wore his cleanest shirt and Arabella wore a simple dress borrowed from the boarding house keeper. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. Just two people standing before a judge and promising to love and honor each other for as long as they lived. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Owen leaned down and kissed Arabella gently, his lips warm and soft against hers. It was her first real kiss, and she felt it all the way to her toes. "Well, Mrs. Mackenzie," Owen said when they separated, his eyes bright. "Shall we go home? Home?" The word settled into Arabella's heart like it belonged there. The journey back to the ranch felt different somehow, charged with new meaning. They were married now, bound together legally and morally. Arabella found herself acutely aware of Owen beside her on the wagon seat, of the strength in his arms as he handled the reins, of the way his hair curled slightly at his collar. They stopped to camp at the same grove of cottonwoods where they had stayed on the way to Santa Fe. But this time, when Owen spread out the bedrolls, he looked at Arabella with a question in his eyes. "We are married now," he said carefully, "but I do not want to assume anything. We can sleep separately if you prefer." Arabella felt her cheeks heat. "Owen, I know this started as a practical arrangement, but I need you to understand something. When I said my vows today, I meant them. I want this to be a real marriage, if you do too." Owen closed the distance between them in 3 strides, cupping her face in his hands. "I want that more than anything. I have wanted it since about the second day you were hiding in my hayloft, if I am being honest. But I needed to know you felt the same way, that this was not just gratitude or convenience. It is not. I care about you, Owen. I think I started caring about you the moment you lied to those men searching for me, when you chose to help a stranger for no reason except that it was right." He kissed her again, deeper this time, and Arabella felt something wake up inside her that she had not known was sleeping. His hands were gentle as they moved to her waist, respectful even in their passion. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Owen rested his forehead against hers. "Are you certain?" he asked quietly. "I am certain." They made love under the stars, with the cottonwood leaves whispering overhead and the creek singing nearby. Owen was patient and tender, making sure Arabella felt safe and cherished. She had been terrified of this moment when she was engaged to Victor, had dreaded the wedding night with every fiber of her being. But with Owen, it felt natural and right, a physical expression of the connection they had built over the past week. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the bedroll, Arabella's head on Owen's chest and his arms wrapped around her. "That was nothing like what I expected," she murmured. "Good or bad different, wonderful different. I was so scared before with Victor, but with you I was not scared at all." Owen pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "I will never give you reason to be scared of me. That is a promise." They arrived back at the ranch 2 days later as husband and wife, tired but happy. The first order of business was to officially register their marriage with the local clerk in Cimarron, making sure there was no legal ambiguity about their union. News of the marriage spread quickly through the small town. Arabella's father came to the ranch 3 days after they returned, red-faced with fury. "What have you done?" he shouted at Arabella as Owen stood protectively beside her. "Do you have any idea how much money Victor Caldwell paid me for your hand? How much I owe him now that you have disgraced us all by running off with this nobody?" "That sounds like your problem, not hers," Owen said coldly. "Arabella is my wife now. She does not owe you or Victor Caldwell anything. She owes me everything. I raised her, fed her, clothed her. You sold her," Owen interrupted. "To a man old enough to be her father, a man who hurt her and scared her. You put money ahead of your own daughter's safety and happiness. As far as I am concerned, you have no right to call yourself her father." Arabella stepped forward, finding her voice. "Owen is right. You made your choice when you arranged my marriage to Victor without considering what I wanted. I made my choice when I ran away. We are both living with the consequences of those choices. But I will not apologize for choosing my own happiness over your gambling debts." Her father looked between them, his expression ugly. "Victor will not let this go. He is a powerful man and you have humiliated him." "Then he should have been a better man," Arabella said simply. "Goodbye, father. Please do not come back unless you are ready to treat me and my husband with respect." She turned and walked back to the ranch house, Owen following behind her. She was shaking, but it felt good, like she had finally stood up for herself in a way she had never been able to before. Victor Caldwell did try to make trouble, as predicted. He spread rumors around town about Arabella, calling her character into question, and suggesting that Owen had kidnapped her. But Sheriff Morrison, who had seen for himself that Arabella was at the ranch of her own free will, shut down the worst of the gossip. And the other ranchers, many of whom had their own issues with Victor's bullying business practices, generally sided with Owen and Arabella. After a few weeks, when it became clear that the marriage was legitimate and legal, Victor's complaints lost their power. He eventually left Cimarron, moving his operations to a different town where he could find a new wife to dominate. Arabella heard later that he had remarried within the year, some poor young woman whose father also owed him money. She said a prayer for the girl and hoped that she would find her own path to freedom someday. Life settled into a new rhythm. Arabella thrived in her role as Owen's wife and partner in the ranch. She had a natural way with the horses, especially the ones that had been badly treated. Owen taught her to ride properly, and soon she was exercising the training horses and even helping him break the younger ones to saddle. The ranch prospered. Word got around that Owen Mackenzie's horses were the best in the territory, well-trained and reliable. Orders increased, and within the year, Owen was able to buy another 20 acres of land and expand his herd. Arabella kept the books and managed the household, and together they built something solid and lasting. But more than the success of the ranch, it was the love between them that grew and deepened. Owen proved himself to be everything Arabella had hoped for in a husband. He was patient and kind, affectionate and respectful. He valued her opinions and consulted her on major decisions. They laughed together and worked together and faced challenges together. On their first anniversary, Owen took Arabella to Santa Fe for a proper celebration. They stayed in a fine hotel and ate in a restaurant with tablecloths and crystal glasses. He gave her a locket with a small photograph of the two of them inside, and she gave him a new saddle she had been secretly saving for. "I never imagined I could be this happy," Arabella said as they sat in their hotel room that night. "When I was running through the streets in that wedding dress, I was not running toward anything, just away from something terrible. But then I found you." "I found you," Owen corrected. "Hiding in my hay and looking terrified. Best thing that ever happened to me." "You really mean that?" "I do. You changed my life, Arabella. The ranch is just a ranch without you. With you, it is a home." She kissed him, pouring all her love and gratitude into it. "I want to build a life with you. A real life, children and grandchildren and growing old together. I want that too, all of it." They returned to the ranch with renewed energy and purpose. That fall, Arabella discovered she was pregnant. The baby arrived the following spring, a healthy boy with Owen's dark hair and Arabella's green eyes. They named him Thomas, after Owen's father. Being a mother filled Arabella with a joy she had not known was possible. She loved everything about it, from the exhausting newborn days to watching Thomas grow and develop his own personality. Owen was a devoted father, patient and playful, teaching his son to ride almost before he could walk. 2 years later, they had a daughter they named Clara, after Owen's sister. The real Clara came to visit from Denver, now married to her railroad executive and expecting her own first child. The sisters-in-law became fast friends, and Clara declared that ranch life suited Arabella much better than it had ever suited her. The years passed in a blur of hard work and deep satisfaction. The ranch continued to grow, and Owen hired on a few ranch hands to help with the increased workload. Arabella started a small vegetable garden that expanded into something substantial, and she began selling her produce at the local market. The money was not much, but she liked having something that was entirely hers. Thomas grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved horses as much as his father did. Clara was bright and energetic, always into something. They played in the barn and helped with chores and grew up knowing they were loved beyond measure. Sometimes Arabella would think back to that midnight in Cimarron when she ran away from her wedding, terrified and desperate, with no plan beyond escape. She would remember climbing into Owen's hayloft and hearing him tell those searchers that nobody was there. She would remember his simple words the next morning, "Stay as long as you need." He had given her safety when she needed it most, but more than that, he had given her a life worth living, a partnership built on respect and trust, a love that grew deeper with every passing year. On their 10th anniversary, they took the children to Santa Fe to show them where their parents had gotten married. Thomas and Clara were fascinated by the big city, having known mainly ranch life. After putting the children to bed at the hotel, Owen and Arabella sat on the balcony overlooking the plaza, sipping coffee and watching the evening crowds. "You ever regret it?" Arabella asked. "Taking in a runaway bride and completely upending your quiet bachelor life?" Owen pulled her close, kissing her temple. "Not for a single second. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. You and those 2 wild children sleeping in the next room. This life we have built together, it is more than I ever dreamed of having. I was so scared that night. I had no idea what I was running toward, only what I was running from. But I found you and you gave me everything. We gave each other everything, Owen corrected. You made my house into a home. You made me into a husband and a father. You brought life and light and laughter into every corner of my world. If anyone should be grateful, it is me. Then we will both be grateful, Arabella said, snuggling into his embrace. For that midnight when I climbed into your hayloft, for your kindness and courage. For the life we have built together. To midnight encounters in haylofts, Owen said, raising his coffee cup in a mock toast. Arabella clinked her cup against his. And to cowboys who know how to treat a lady right. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over Santa Fe, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances and built something beautiful and lasting. The runaway bride and the cowboy who offered her shelter. Two souls who had chosen each other and never looked back. Years continued to pass in their own particular rhythm. Thomas turned 17 and showed every sign of taking over the ranch someday, though he also talked about attending agricultural college to learn modern horse breeding techniques. Clara at 15 was already an accomplished rider and had started training horses herself, proving she had inherited both her parents' gifts. Owen's hair had started to gray at the temples, making him look distinguished. Arabella still woke up some mornings surprised by her own happiness, by the fact that this life was really hers. The ranch had expanded to nearly 100 acres. They had a solid reputation throughout the territory, and people came from as far away as Texas to buy Owen Mackenzie's horses. But the thing Arabella treasured most was not the success or the prosperity. It was the small moments. Owen bringing her coffee in the morning while she did the books, working side by side in the barn while the children played nearby. The quiet evenings on the porch after the day's work was done, sitting together and talking about everything and nothing. Sometimes she would see young women in Cimarron, girls being courted by men their fathers had chosen, and she would wonder if any of them felt the same trapped desperation she had felt before her wedding day. She had started quietly helping where she could, offering employment to young women who needed a way to support themselves, teaching them skills that would give them options beyond marriage. One day, a young woman named Sarah showed up at the ranch, referred by one of the women Arabella had helped previously. Sarah's situation was painfully familiar, an arranged marriage to a much older man, parents who refused to listen to her protests. But unlike Arabella, Sarah had nowhere to run. Arabella and Owen took her in without hesitation, giving her work at the ranch and a safe place to stay. Over the next few years, 3 more young women found their way to the Mackenzie ranch, each with a similar story. Arabella taught them bookkeeping and animal husbandry. Owen taught them to ride and work with horses. When they were ready, Arabella helped them find positions on other ranches or in town, giving them the independence they needed to control their own futures. "You are building quite a reputation," Owen said one evening as they watched Sarah, who had been with them for 6 months, confidently leading a training session with one of the young horses. "The ranch that gives women a second chance. Is that a problem? Not at all. I am proud of you. You took the second chance you got and you are passing it forward. That is a good thing." Arabella leaned against him. "You gave me more than a second chance. You gave me a whole new life." "We gave each other that," Owen said, echoing his words from years before. "I love you, Arabella Mackenzie. More than I knew it was possible to love someone. I love you too. You saved me, Owen, in every way a person can be saved." On their 20th anniversary, their children arranged a surprise party at the ranch. Clara had come home from her own place in Santa Fe, where she ran a successful horse training business. Thomas had indeed taken over much of the ranch operations, and had recently married a sweet young woman named Elizabeth who fit into the family perfectly. The barn had been decorated with lanterns and ribbons, and half the town seemed to be in attendance. Arabella and Owen stood together, overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and respect from their community. Sheriff Morrison, now retired but still sharp, raised a glass in toast. 20 years ago, Owen Mackenzie made a choice to help someone in need, and Arabella Winters made the choice to trust a stranger. Those choices led to one of the strongest marriages I have ever seen, and a family that has made this whole community better. To Owen and Arabella. To Owen and Arabella, the crowd echoed. Later that night, after all the guests had gone home and the children had left for their own houses, Owen and Arabella walked out to the barn. They climbed up to the loft, just as Arabella had done that first midnight so many years ago. "I was so terrified," Arabella said softly, looking around at the space that had been her sanctuary. "I thought my life was over. I had no idea it was just beginning." Owen wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I remember seeing you up here in that ridiculous wedding dress, looking like a scared rabbit. My first thought was wondering what kind of man you were running from. My second thought was that I would do whatever it took to keep you safe. And you did. You kept me safe and you gave me a home and a family and a purpose. You gave me everything, Owen." "No," Owen said firmly, turning her to face him. "We built this together. Your courage, your strength, your kindness, those are what made this life what it is. I just gave you a place to start." Arabella kissed him, pouring 20 years of love and gratitude into it. "I would do it all again. Every moment, every choice. They all led me to you." They stood together in the hayloft as moonlight streamed through the window. Two people who had found each other in the darkness and built a life filled with light. The runaway bride and the cowboy who offered her shelter had become so much more. Partners, lovers, friends, parents, and pillars of their community. Thomas and Elizabeth gave them their first grandchild the following year, a little girl they named Arabella. Holding her tiny granddaughter, feeling that perfect weight in her arms, Arabella was struck by the miraculous chain of events that had led to this moment. If she had not run away from her wedding, if she had not found Owen's barn, if he had not been the kind of man who chose compassion over reward money, none of this would exist. "What are you thinking about?" Owen asked, watching her cradle the baby. "About fate and choice and how sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best things. About how running away in terror led me to you. About how this little girl exists because I climbed into your hayloft at midnight." Owen sat beside her, putting his arm around her shoulders. "And because I told you to stay as long as you needed." "I am still here," Arabella said softly. "Still staying. Good. Because I still need you. I will always need you." They sat together, 3 generations of the life they had built, and Arabella felt a peace so profound it brought tears to her eyes. She had run away from one future and stumbled into another, better one. She had been lost and scared and desperate, and she had been found by the right person at the right time. The years continued their steady march. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch house with noise and laughter. Clara married a kind man who supported her business ambitions, and they divided their time between Santa Fe and the ranch. Thomas expanded the horse breeding operation, incorporating new techniques and gaining an even wider reputation for quality. Owen's hair went fully silver, but his hands remained steady and his eyes still crinkled when he smiled at Arabella. She had her own silver threads now, and lines around her eyes from years of laughing and living. They moved a bit slower than they once had, but they still worked together in the barn most days, still sat together on the porch each evening, still reached for each other in the night. On a spring evening when they had been married for 32 years, Owen and Arabella took a walk around the property, something they did often. The ranch was beautiful this time of year, with wildflowers dotting the grasslands and new colts frolicking in the pastures. They walked hand in hand, comfortable in the silence that long marriages earn. "You remember what you said to me that first morning?" Arabella asked. "After you hid me from Victor's men." "I said a lot of things that morning. You said I could stay as long as I needed. And I am still here, still needing you." Owen squeezed her hand. "Best decision I ever made telling you that. Second best was asking you to marry me." "What is the best decision?" "Falling in love with you. That was not really a decision, though, more like an inevitability. I think I started loving you the moment I saw you in that hayloft, even if I did not know it yet." Arabella stopped walking and turned to face him. "I love you, Owen Mackenzie. Thank you for being the kind of man who helps a stranger. Thank you for giving me a life worth living. Thank you for choosing me, for trusting me, for building this life with me." They kissed there in the spring meadow, with 3 decades of love behind them and whatever time they had left ahead of them. Two people who had started with nothing but kindness and courage and built an empire of love. The grandchildren would sometimes ask Arabella to tell the story of how she and Grandpa Owen met. She would gather them around and tell them about the midnight she ran away from a wedding, about the cowboy who hid her in his hayloft, about the adventures that followed. The children loved the drama of it, the romance. But what Arabella always emphasized was the choice they had both made. She had chosen to trust when she had no reason to trust. Owen had chosen to help when it would have been easier and safer to turn her away. And every day since then, they had chosen each other, over and over again. "The most important part," she would tell her grandchildren, "is not the running away or the hiding or even the falling in love. It is the choosing. Every single day your grandpa and I choose each other. That is what makes a marriage last." On their 40th anniversary, the whole family gathered at the ranch for a celebration. Thomas and Elizabeth's children were growing up now, and Clara's oldest son was already talking about becoming a horse trainer like his mother and grandparents. The barn was once again decorated with lanterns, and there was music and dancing and more food than any group could reasonably eat. As the party wound down and the family began to drift home, Owen and Arabella found themselves alone in the barn, standing beneath the loft where their story had begun. 40 years, Arabella marveled. Sometimes it feels like 40 days and sometimes it feels like forever in the best possible way. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had not run away, if you had married Victor Caldwell? Arabella shuddered. I try not to. That version of me, the one who went through with that wedding, she would have been a completely different person, broken and afraid and trapped. I am grateful every day that I found the courage to run, and even more grateful that I ran in the direction of your ranch. I am grateful you did too. You are my whole world, Arabella. Everything good in my life traces back to you. We are each other's world, Arabella said, taking both his hands in hers. That is what we built together, a world where we could both be safe and happy and free. They climbed up to the loft one more time, moving carefully on joints that were not as young as they once were. They sat in the hay, just as Arabella had sat that first night, and Owen put his arm around her. Stay as long as you need, he said softly, echoing his words from 4 decades ago. Always, Arabella replied. I will always stay. They sat together in the hayloft, two souls who had found each other in darkness and created a lifetime of light. As the stars came out over the New Mexico ranch they had built together, one choice at a time, one day at a time, one moment of love at a time. Years later, when Owen was 70 and Arabella 68, they still worked the ranch together, though they had handed over most of the day-to-day operations to Thomas. They still took their evening walks, still sat together on the porch, still reached for each other in the night. The love between them had not diminished with time, but had instead transformed into something even deeper, something that transcended words or gestures. It simply was, as fundamental as breathing. One evening, as they watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink, Arabella leaned her head on Owen's shoulder. "I have been thinking," she said, "about everything that had to happen for us to be sitting here right now. All the choices and chances and moments that led us to each other. It seems impossible, does it not, that everything worked out exactly as it needed to?" "Maybe it is not about everything working out," Owen suggested. "Maybe it is about us working to make the best of what we were given. We took a bad situation and turned it into something beautiful. That was not fate or luck. That was us choosing every day to build something good. You are probably right, but I still feel lucky." "So do I. Lucky and grateful and more in love with you now than I was 45 years ago when I found you in my hayloft." Arabella lifted her head to look at him. "How is that possible? How do you love someone more after 45 years? Because I know you now in ways I could not have known you then. I know how you look when you first wake up in the morning. I know the sound of your laugh when something truly delights you. I know your strength and your courage and your endless capacity for kindness. I have watched you raise our children and love our grandchildren and help so many young women find their way to better lives. Every day, I discover something new to love about you. So yes, I love you more now, and I will love you even more tomorrow." Tears streamed down Arabella's face, but they were happy tears. "I love you too, Owen Mackenzie. Thank you for being my shelter in the storm. Thank you for being my home." They sat together as darkness fell. Two people who had chosen each other in a moment of crisis, and then kept choosing each other through every challenge and triumph that followed. The runaway bride and the cowboy who told her she could stay as long as she needed. Forever, as it turned out, was exactly as long as they both needed. Thomas and Elizabeth eventually had 4 children who all grew up learning the horse business from their grandparents. Clara's training facility in Santa Fe became one of the most respected in the territory, and she brought her own children to the ranch every summer to work alongside their cousins. The Mackenzie name became synonymous with quality horses and ethical treatment of both animals and people. But more than any business success, the legacy Owen and Arabella left was one of love and second chances. The young women Arabella had helped over the years went on to build their own successful lives, and many of them returned to thank her for giving them the courage and skills to choose their own paths. The ranch became known as a place where someone running from a bad situation could find help, no questions asked. "You started something important," Owen told Arabella one day as they watched a young woman named Marie confidently working with one of the training horses. Marie had arrived 6 months earlier, fleeing an arranged marriage to a man who had already hurt her. Now she was thriving, learning skills that would let her support herself. "You are changing lives just like I changed yours. Just like you changed mine," Arabella corrected. "I could not do any of this without your support. You have always stood beside me, believing in me even when I doubted myself. That is what partners do. That is what love does." As they grew older, Owen and Arabella faced the challenges that come with aging bodies and the passing of time. But they faced them together, just as they had faced everything else. When Owen's knees started giving him trouble, Arabella was there to help him into the saddle. When Arabella's eyesight began to fade, Owen read to her every evening, their favorite books and new ones alike. They celebrated their 50th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. The party was held in the barn, of course, beneath the loft where everything had started. 5 decades of love and partnership, and they were still discovering new things about each other, still finding reasons to laugh and talk and simply be together. 50 years, Clara said in her toast, of showing all of us what real love looks like. Not the fairy tale kind that exists only in stories, but the kind built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day. Thank you, mother and father, for being an example of what marriage should be. That night, after everyone had gone home, Owen helped Arabella up to the loft one last time. They sat together in the hay, just as they had so many times before, surrounded by memories and love. I never imagined when I climbed up here that first night that I was climbing toward my entire future, Arabella said softly. I thought I was just finding a place to hide, but I found so much more. I found you. I found myself. I found a life worth living. Owen kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. And I found a runaway bride in a wedding dress who changed everything. Best night of my life, even if I did not know it at the time. Stay as long as you need, Arabella quoted, smiling at him through happy tears. Forever, Owen replied. Stay forever. I plan to. They sat together in the hayloft, two people who had built a life on a foundation of kindness and courage, watching the stars come out over the ranch they had created together. The runaway bride and her cowboy, still in love, still choosing each other, still grateful for the midnight encounter that had changed both their lives. And in the years that followed, as Owen and Arabella grew old together with grace and love, their story became legend in Cimarron and beyond. The tale of a woman who ran from a terrible fate and found a beautiful future. The tale of a man who chose compassion over profit and gained more than he ever dreamed. But most of all, the tale of two people who proved that real love is not about perfect circumstances or fairy tale beginnings, but about choosing each other, day after day, year after year, building something strong and true and lasting. Their love was proof that sometimes the worst moments can lead to the best lives, that courage and kindness can change everything, and that home is not a place but a person you choose to stay with, for as long as you both shall live.